So, to be perfectly honest with you, up until very recently, I didn't really care about flat Earth. I was interested in why people believed it, but honestly, being wrong about a scientific fact is not a sin. And it's not anything that I've had any particular concern over, as it's certainly not an issue of the soul, right? Being wrong about something is irrelevant, or about a fact in the world is irrelevant. However, recently, some things have occurred, and I realized I was wrong because this isn't about being wrong about something from a scientific perspective. This is a doctrine of devils. It is created by liars and con artists. It is fed to people who were vulnerable, and it is creating a destructive and toxic morality that honestly is bad. It's quite evil. And I know what you're saying. Okay, so Jason, how can you possibly prove this? You're going to go line by line and fact by fact. No, we'd be here for days if I did that. As far as the science, for some of it, actually for most of it, there's plenty of links below. Plenty of them. Plenty of people have spent hundreds of hours working on this and explaining this to people who have bought into this lie. Plenty of people are doing scriptural arguments who have to counter this lie. I'm not going to do that because if evidence had anything to do with this, honestly, you wouldn't believe in the flat earth. No one would. It's not evidence based, it's emotionally based. The basic claim is that this is a scriptural concept that the biblical authors believed the earth was flat, and therefore all that's happening is people are returning to the scriptures and rejecting modernity because, to be honest, there's a lot of people lying to us about a lot of things. Yeah, completely agree. And so the claim is, well, let's hold on to this thing because we know the scriptures are true, and they are. So if we hold on to them, then we won't be deceived by the world. Here's the problem. The reason I don't need to go line by line scripturally on this isn't what the biblical authors had in their head. It's an entirely foreign concept. This is. I went ahead and threw the Sheol, the fact that you have Abraham's bosom or paradise, and then Hades and Gehenna on the other side, because I like to be accurate. And I threw Leviathan in there, not the one from Job 41. We'll talk about that in the next episode. But Leviathan is there too. And when the authors of the scriptures are writing, this is the worldview they have in their head. The waters below, the Tehom or abyss. The earth is on top of that. The firmament is held up by mountains. There is no ice wall. And of course, God is above the cosmic sea, the waters above. You may be noticing a problem if you're a modern flat earth believer. The sun and the moon do not go around and round in circles, they go under the earth. By the way, we see this, and before you say, oh, there's nothing in scripture saying that, Ecclesiastes, the sun rises and the sun goes down and hastens to the place where it rises. Sounds an awful lot like what's happening here. The sun goes up, the moon goes up, the sun goes down, the moon goes down. It travels under the earth through Sheol and then comes out the other side. And that is a perfectly reasonable expectation when you realize this is what we see from our perspective. The sun, the moon, they stay the exact same size. They go up, they go over, they go down. That's what we see. This worldview would have you seeing this. The sun and moon should appear as tiny dots, never dropping below the horizon, should travel in a circular pattern, enlarging to its biggest moment when it's midday, and then getting smaller and moving in another circular pattern until it disappears as a tiny point on the far distant horizon, but never dropping below the horizon. I am an artist. I am an expert in perspective. This is what you should see. Period. If this is true, this is what you would see. Not this. This is why the entire ancient world had this concept. So, no, the modern flat earth is not a biblical concept at all. It was created by Samuel Rowbotham, a gentleman we'll talk a little bit more about later, but he created this in 1849. This is a very recent idea. This is a very recent concept and is entirely foreign. Now, you may be saying, but Jason, the earth is flat in one view, the earth is flat in the other view. It's the same thing. No. This is like saying wolves and deer are the same creature because they're quadrupeds. These are radically different perspectives. And again, if this were true, this is what you should see. Also, everyone on the planet should be able to see Polaris, the North Star. There is no argument against this. Again, artist. That's what you should see. There is no argument for this. Also, what you should not see in the northern hemisphere, when you look at how the stars move around Polaris, they seem to be moving counterclockwise. But if you go to the equator, they're moving straight overhead. And if you go far enough south into the southern equator and you see the southern celestial pole, where all the stars are rotating around it, just like in the north, they're moving counterclockwise. Impossible on Samuel Rowbotham's model. Like I said, plenty of people have scriptural arguments to make. I don't need to, because this man created a foreign concept. He did not create anything based on scripture. He made it up. And now would be a really good time to perhaps discuss our friend Samuel Rowbotham. As I said, he wrote the book Zetetic Astronomy, it was a pamphlet, 16 pages at first, in 1849. It would become a book in 1865. And that's a picture on the right-hand side of his initial map. So again, unlike the people who like to make videos on flat Earth, I'm not going to lie to you about this. This guy created this concept. If you've never heard of Samuel Rowbotham, I understand. And here's why I understand. Because Samuel Burley Rowbotham, aka Parallax, again, he wrote it under a nom de plume. I understand, not a problem with that at all. But he did go by later Dr. Samuel Burley. Now, this is important. You see, when he wrote Zetetic Astronomy, he was a leader of a socialist cult. He then left the socialist cult after writing this and turning into a book, and then started going by Dr. Samuel Burley, where he was involved in numerous deaths because he liked to treat people with phosphorus. That seems weird because it is, including, by the way, one of his sons who died under his ministrations. And yes, the courts ruled that's what was happening. I'm going to ignore the fact that that his third wife was a 15-year-old girl he'd been living with for a few years. I'll leave that alone. But he also went by S. Goulden. He patented several machines that were supposed to prolong health and even allow you to live forever. Given how the whole phosphorus thing worked, I don't know how much I would have paid to patent those machines, but to each his own. So again, Samuel Burley Rowbotham, a socialist cult leader who poisoned people, claiming to be a health expert, because again, that doctor was entirely made up. He had no medical training. He's the guy who comes up with this concept. That's the man who is telling you that this is a scriptural idea. A socialist cult leader and con man who got people killed. Again, we'll ignore the 15-year-old wife. Now, moving on. So, not a scriptural idea at all. Foreign concept to the scriptural authors. They would have looked at you like you were nuts, because even they would have said, well, hold on. The sun and moon don't move like that. What are you talking about? This is craziness. In order to continue, you have to lie. Now, again, lots of people have just been deceived by this worldview, by people who are deceivers. 1 Timothy 4:1-2 says, "Now the Spirit expressly says that in latter times some will depart from the faith by devoting themselves to deceitful spirits and teachings of demons through the insincerity of liars whose consciences have been seared." Liars whose consciences have been seared. Like perhaps the kind of people who would lie about the blue marble photograph. You see, there's two different versions. There's the original blue marble photograph taken in 1972 as a photograph. There was then in 2002 a photograph that was put together using Photoshop by combining satellite photographs. What is very common in the flat earth community is to take the line from NASA, the fact that NASA is admitting that this is what the 2002 photograph is, that it was put together using Photoshop, comprised of satellite images, and they say that applies to the 1972 photograph. So here's the problem. That's not a mistake. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a lie. That's an obvious lie. It's one thing to say, I believe the 1972 photo was faked. Okay, fine. You don't have any evidence for it. But then to come over and take the 2002 blue marble photographs that were created using Photoshop and say, see, NASA admits that it photoshopped the blue marble photograph from 1972. That's an objective lie. Another one that's my favorite, this one's very recent, we'll do some more recent ones, is that the photograph of the pilots or the astronauts that just recently returned, you have the, oh, look at how wonderful she looks after she went to space. She's nice and tan and rested, and she was looking a little worse for wear before space. If you notice the heart on that Instagram reel that's from Dan the Cyman, I couldn't find the original video, but we see things like this all the time, where they take what is actually the before space photograph, her in the blue uniform or the blue outfit. That was before she left for space. The white uniform was after she's been trapped in space for 9 months. You cannot make this mistake. This is not a mistake. This is not a misunderstanding. This is a lie. This is a deliberate falsehood. That sounds an awful lot like liars whose consciences have been seared. However, there's one lie. Like I said, if we were going to do this all day and go through every single lie, this show would be 10 hours long. I would like to start with the lie that ends all lies. The lie that absolutely is the mother of every distortion that the flat earth proponents put forward, which is that the word NASA means deception in Hebrew. This is the lie that allows them to get away with everything in their minds. So let's actually go and test this theory. This is blueletterbible.org. In fact, a lot of channels use screen grabs from this very program. I love blueletterbible.org. It's a great program for getting into the original languages for people who are laymen, and it's very easy to go through. And here's the thing, right here, they'll say, see, right here, Strong's 45377 spelled. It transliterates into English NASA. See, NASA means to deceive in Hebrew, because if we scroll down, what does it mean? To beguile, to deceive. It's translated as deceive 12 times. Greatly beguiled me, sees utterly. So this word means to deceive. NASA, boom, we're done. Except, as you can probably see on the screen, obviously, Hebrew doesn't use an N and an A and an S the way we do. It's a different language altogether. So how is this word actually pronounced? Well, if you don't know what those little scribbles over the A, S, and A mean, and most people don't, that's perfectly fine. They have the phonetic pronunciation right here. Strong's 45377 isn't NASA, it's Nasha. Now, if you think I'm making that up and I'm mispronouncing it, there's a little button here that you can push that shows you, oh, this is how it's pronounced. Allow Blue Letter Bible to tell you how this word is actually pronounced in Hebrew.
Strong's H, 5377. Nasha. Nasha.
So there you go. It's not NASA, it's Nasha. Now you may say, what's the difference? It's close enough. Well, hold on. Let's type in Strong's H5375. Oh, look. It's also spelled NASA, but the little dashes and dots are different. What does this word say? Oh, it's NASA. Let's hear the voice again.
Strong's H, 5375. Nasa. Nasa.
So this word actually sounds like NASA. It's Nasa. It's much closer phonetically, transliterated the same way. And what does this word mean? Oh, to lift up, to bear, to carry. It's translated as bear, meaning to bear up or lift up 115 times, means up 219 times. Bear 34, carry, take, carry away, borne, armor bearer. So this word that actually sounds in the Hebrew like NASA means to bear up or to lift or to carry. It does not mean to deceive. That's a lie. So the lying, the brazen, bold-faced lying is bad enough. But the thing that really pushes us over the edge for me, the thing that makes it a doctrine of devils and not just another deception out there, aside from placing it on scripture where it doesn't belong, aside from being forced to believe lies, is the slander. Let's look at what scripture says about slander real quick, shall we? Aside from being listed as one of the sins of those who are opposed to God in Romans 1, 29 through 30, James 4:11 says, "Do not speak ill against one another, brothers. The one who speaks against a brother or judges his brother speaks evil against the law and judges the law." Colossians 3:8 says, "Now you must put them all away, anger, wrath, malice, slander, and obscene talk from your mouth." Slander is not favored in Scripture. In fact, it's a pretty big problem. The other problem is to believe the lies, right? The lie of Flat Earth, the lie of Samuel Rowbotham. You have to not just believe the lies that you're being told, you have to accuse, off the top of my head, everyone who's ever been to space, everyone who works in astronomy, everyone who works with satellites, anyone who's ever climbed Mount Everest or flown high enough to see the curvature of the Earth, everyone who's seen the midnight sun in Antarctica, the 82,615 people who live in Ushuaia, who have 18-hour days in between October and March, everyone who has ever sailed around or flown over Antarctica, everyone who has ever navigated using the stars in the southern hemisphere, everyone who plans flight paths and makes fuel calculations for planes, everyone who has ever flown or sailed to Australia, and everyone who has ever looked up in Australia, Uruguay, or any southernmost landmass and seen the sidereal constellations and moon upside down. If you don't know what the sidereal constellations are, those are the major constellations like Libra, Virgo, etc. Those in the moon are upside down if you're far enough south. Everyone in those latitudes who've ever seen the constellation of Crux, aka the Southern Cross, and not seen Polaris, everyone who serves the military and has had to incorporate the curvature of the Earth in long-range targeting and or the use of radar, and very specifically, These two Christians, Pastor Will Duffy, who orchestrated the final experiment, linked to his website and all the work below, and Barry E. Wilmore, aka Butch. He was the other astronaut stranded in space for 9 months. These two Christian men, and again, everyone on this list that I just showed you, and I had to cut this down. These were just everyone off the top of my head I could think of. I had to cut the list down because it got too long. All of these people, there are Christians in that group, and these two men very specifically. It's not that these people would have to be deceived. They would have to be willing participants in the lie, in the deception, in the cover-up. That is slander. That is full-blown, unadulterated slander. These are not people who would be deceived. They would have to be in on it. Now, you're having to claim something scriptural when it's not. You're having to believe lies, bold-faced, unashamed lies. I'm sorry, but the NASA equals deception lie is so bold-faced, it's comical. But someone who's willing to lie and then force you to slander other Christians puts you in a very bad situation. What does 2 Timothy 2:15 say? Be diligent to present yourself approved to God, a worker who does not need to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. How can you rightly divide the word of truth if you are not just believing in a lie, but you are slandering your fellow Christians? Hosea says, 4:6, chapter 4, verse 6a, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because you have rejected knowledge, I reject you from being a priest to me. As Christians, we are priests unto the world. You don't think that Hosea still applies to us if we are rejecting knowledge? Genuinely, not just saying, hey, I don't know about this, or maybe I was lied to about this. You are actively rejecting knowledge. You are putting something on Scripture that doesn't belong there. How long can you be a priest of God to people if you've rejected knowledge? And when you reject that knowledge, Romans 2:24 says, for it is written, the name of God is blasphemed among the Gentiles because of you. To embrace such a crazy idea on such obvious lies makes us Christians laughingstock. Now you may be saying, whoa, Jason, you just took that verse out of context. Really? Let's look at Romans 2:19 through 23, the verses just before Romans 24. And if you are sure that you yourself are a guide to the blind, a light to those who are in darkness, an instructor of the foolish, a teacher of children, having the law in the embodiment of knowledge and truth, you then who teach others, do you not teach yourself? While you preach against stealing, do you steal? You who say that you must not commit adultery, do you commit adultery? You who abhor idols, do you rob temples? You who boast in the law, dishonor God by breaking the law. You are believing a lie, you are manipulating Scripture, and you are slandering people. Sounds like Romans 2:24 is far more applicable. And the part that hurts me the most, not just as a Christian, but as someone who really is in this field trying to bring about truth, creating a truly Christian worldview, is that I firmly believe that nature itself is a gospel. Many people have come to faith because of the reality that science has actually brought us. It's easy to talk about, oh, it's science versus religion. It's not. It's an atheistic religion against religion. Many people have actually come to God through science because they look and they say, hey, nature is telling me God's real, that this is all designed. Romans 1, very specifically, 19 through 20, says, for what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made, so they are without excuse. Looking at nature tells you there is a God, that he's a good God, that he's an intelligent God, that he's a God of precision. But the problem is, you have to be told about Jesus. How can we proclaim the gospel of Jesus to these people if we are lying about The gospel they already have, the gospel that Paul is pointing to right here. God's already given them the gospel of himself to the world. We as Christians have to be priests and bring that gospel to them, the gospel of Jesus Christ, but we can't. Not if we're walking around making fools of ourselves and slandering other Christians. The name of God is blasphemed among you, among the Gentiles, because of you. Simple fact of the matter is, I didn't care about flat earth. Being wrong about things is not a sin. But this is not about being wrong. This is about lying. This is about manipulating scripture to make it say something that a socialist cult leader 200 years ago came up with. It's about forcing you to slander other Christians and lie. Flat earth is not a mistake or a misunderstanding. It is a doctrine of devils, and you must come out of it.